Hello, this is Donna Sutton from Arcy Hospice. I'm so glad that you're here today. This is session 2 of Facing the Mourning. It is presented by Arcy Hospice and the Heartlight Center. If you would like to purchase the companion workbook, please go to www.heartlightcenter.org. Again, I wanted to review why this session is important. Because moments like this are very difficult. Having support and real ways to work through difficult times are important tools to have. This session is meant to be interactive and provide you tools that can be used over and over no matter the loss that you have had in your life. There are 4 sessions, and of course there are many more ways to handle grief, but you have to start somewhere, right? So these sessions are about sharing your story, building memorials, writing in journals, and writing letters. This is our second session, and it focuses on letter writing. And again, here are the goals for our sessions together. That we will work through 4 ways to express your grief. Allow you to feel your feels and share your pain. It's a place to confirm that your grief is normal and a part of this journey. Learn how to live with the loss you have experienced and find ways to cope with it each day. See, not everything you do will fit, but you will have a chance to see what will work for you. Build a plan to cope with the future and find a new normal. And take charge of your grief and learn to live with it. The 5 stages of grief is perhaps the most popular way of understanding what we are feeling after losing someone. It is also the most misunderstood theory. This is not 5 steps to walk through, but more of a wagon wheel. You may get through one stage and find yourself at stage 3, then back to 1. The stages are just meant to help you frame and identify what you may be feeling. Keep in mind that you may not experience all the stages, or you may spend time bouncing between all 5. No matter how you experience them, it is normal. So let's look at the 5 stages of grief as set out by Kubler-Ross. The 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. They are a part of the framework that makes up our learning to live with the one we lost. They are tools to help us frame and identify what we may be feeling, but they are not stops on some linear timeline in grief. Not everyone goes through all of them, and not everyone goes through in a prescribed order. Our hope is that with these stages come the knowledge of grief's terrain, making us better equipped to cope with the life and with loss. At times, people in grief will often report more stages. Just remember, your grief is as unique as you are. Denial is usually considered the first of the 5 stages of grief. It helps us to survive the loss. In this stage, the world becomes meaningless and overwhelming. Life makes no sense. We find ourselves in a state of shock and denial. We go numb, and we wonder, how can we go on? If we can go on, why we should go on. We try to find a way to simply get through each day. Denial and shock help us cope with and make survival possible. Denial helps us to pace our feelings of grief. There is a grace in denial. It is nature's way of letting in only as much as you can handle. As you accept the reality of the loss and start to ask yourself questions, you are unknowingly beginning the healing process. You are becoming stronger, and the denial is beginning to fade. But as you proceed, all the feelings you were denying begin to surface. Anger is a necessary stage of the healing process. Be willing to feel your anger, even though it may seem endless. The more you truly feel it, the more it will begin to dissipate, and the more you will heal. There are many other emotions under the anger, and you will get to them in time. But anger is the emotion that we are most used to managing. The truth is, anger has no limits. It can extend not only to your friends, the doctors, your family, yourself, and your loved one who died, but also to God. You may ask, where is God in this? Underneath anger is pain, your pain. It is natural to feel deserted and abandoned, but when we live in a society that fears anger, anger is a strength and it can be an anchor, giving temporary structure to the nothingness of loss. At first, grief feels like it's being lost at sea, no connection to anything. Then you get angry at someone, maybe a person who didn't attend the funeral, maybe a person who isn't around, maybe a person who is different now that your loved one has died. Suddenly you have a structure, your anger towards them. The anger becomes a bridge over the open sea, a connection from you to them. It is something to hold on to, and a connection made from the strength of anger feels better than nothing. We usually know more about suppressing anger than feeling it. The anger is just another indication of the intensity of your love for the loved one that you have lost. Before a loss, it seems like you will do anything if only your loved one would be spared. Please, God, you bargain. I will never be angry at my wife again if you'll just let her live. After a loss, bargaining may take the form of a temporary truce. What if I devote the rest of my life to helping others? Then can I wake up and realize this has all been a bad dream? We become lost in the maze of if only or what if statements. We want life returned to what it was. We want our loved one restored. We want to go back in time, find a tumor sooner, recognize the illness more quickly, stop the accident from happening. If only, if only, if only. Guilt is often bargaining's companion. The if onlys cause us to find fault in ourselves and what we think we could have done differently. We may even bargain with the pain. We will do anything not to feel the pain of the loss. We remain in the past, trying to negotiate our way out of the hurt. People often think of the stages as lasting weeks or months. They forget that the stages are responses to feelings that can last for minutes or hours, as we flip in and out of one of them another. We do not enter and leave each individual stage in a linear fashion. We may feel one, then another, and back again, and to the first one. After bargaining, our attention moves squarely into the present. Empty feelings present themselves, and grief enters our lives on a deeper level, deeper than we have ever imagined. This depressive stage feels as though it will last forever. It's important to understand that this depression is not a sign of mental illness. It is the appropriate response to a great loss. We withdraw from life, left in a fog of intense sadness, wondering, perhaps, is there any point in going on alone? Why go on at all? Depression after a loss is too often seen as unnatural, a state to be fixed, something to snap out of. The first question to ask yourself is whether or not the situation you're in is depression. The loss of a loved one is a very depressing situation, and depression is a normal and appropriate response. To not experience depression after a loved one dies would be unusual. When a loss fully settles into your soul, then realization that your loved one didn't get better this time and is not coming back is understandably depressing. If grief is a process of healing, then depression is one of the many necessary steps along the way. Acceptance is often confused with the notion of being all right or okay with what happened. This is not the case. Most people don't ever feel okay or all right about the loss of a loved one. This stage is about accepting the reality that our loved one is physically gone and recognizing that this new reality is the permanent reality. We will never like this reality or make it okay, but eventually we accept it. We learn to live here. It is the new norm with which we must learn to live. We must try to live now in a world where our loved one is missing. In resisting this new norm, at first, many people want to maintain life as it was before a loved one died. In time, through bits and pieces of acceptance, however, we see that we cannot maintain the past intact. It has been forever changed and we must readjust. We must learn to reorganize roles, reassigning them to others, or take them on ourselves. Finding acceptance may just be having more good days than bad days. As we begin to live again and enjoy our life, we often feel that in doing so we're betraying our loved one. We can never replace what has been lost, but we can make new connections, new meaningful relationships, new interdependencies. Instead of denying our feelings, we listen to our needs. We move, we change, we grow, we involve. We may start to reach out to others and become involved in their lives. We invest in our friendships and in our relationships with ourselves. We begin to live again, but we cannot do so until we have given grief its time. After learning about those 5 stages, let's look at a coping method that is called letter writing. You're probably wondering, why should we write letters? You see, letter writing is probably the best tool for safely expressing emotions, releasing anger and guilt, and sharing the memory of a loved one with others. Letter writing encourages you to share emotional thoughts, to express yourself, to say goodbye. Maybe you didn't have a chance to do that. To share intimate thoughts, maybe things you didn't get to share with your loved one. Share memories and stories to future generations, to that grandchild who was not born before grandma passed away. To release anger. Whether the letter is present to the recipient will depend on who it is written to and for what purpose. For example, an angry letter may be used as a tool to release anger, but nothing will be gained by mailing or presenting it. A letter to a grandchild about their grandmother should be presented when the time is right. You may be wondering who to write a letter to. Multiple letters can be written if you have trouble choosing just one person to write to. I encourage you to write as many letters to as many people as you need to. You can even write a letter to the same person over and over again if you want, especially if you have new thoughts that you want to share with them. You can write a letter to a family member, a friend, your deceased loved one, to God, a religious figure, doctor or hospital who cared for your loved one, a healthcare worker, a neighbor, or to a future grandchild. Once you know who you want to write your letters to, it's sometimes hard to get started. You may stare at that blank piece of paper or computer screen before you can begin for a long time. But once you figure out who you want to write to, these letters can be something you handwrite or type out on a scrap of paper. You can use nice stationery or a napkin if you want to. They can be long or short. They can be addressed to anyone, and they can release anxiety and emotion. And they are really helpful on your grief journey. And just here's a tip. If you're not comfortable writing a letter, feel free to write a poem, or maybe a song, or put something in memoir, journal, or diary form. If you're like me, you stare at that blank page or screen, not knowing where to start. So here are some thought triggers to get you started. Maybe one of them will trigger some ideas that you want to share. Start with, I feel. I need to tell you. Please listen to what I'm saying. I need. Since, insert your loved one's name, life ended too soon, I wanted to be sure you know all about. I am not sure how I will go on, but I do know. I think that you are. I have found support from. I have found peace knowing that. I am angry because. I wish you could have. You could never understand that. Letter writing is a lot easier than you think. Just spend time reflecting on who you would like to write a letter to, whether it is a loved letter or a letter addressing an issue. Either way, it should come from the heart. You may come up with several individuals or a group of people to whom you would like to write a letter. You may come up with points for several different letters. Decide where and with who you would like to start. You may mail or email your letter or not. After you write it, you may decide to throw it out or delete it. Determine that once you have written it. In most cases, the reflection while writing the letter may be enough so that you may not even write the letter. It's also okay to write the letter and put it away and come back to it in several weeks and read it again. A day from now, a week from now, a month from now, just to review how you were feeling. Just a reminder, if you're writing a letter in anger, you may want to set it aside and go back and look it over again before you ever decide to email or mail it, because you can't take back those words, especially if they were written in anger and now you don't want someone to know you said them. If a format would help you with points that you would like to write about, here's one that I suggest. You could decide who you will write your letter to, and then just list out things you would like to talk about. And then in the course of the letter, you can expand on each of those points and put more information about them or reasons why you feel that way. And remember, you are not limited to one letter. You may also write 2, 3, 10 letters, as many as it takes, to as many people as it takes, or to address as many situations as it takes for you to feel like your grief, your anger, your whatever is being addressed. Now, those letters aren't going to write themselves, so it's time to start. I don't mean starting the letter right now. I mean starting the process of deciding who you need to say something to and what might need to be said. You can go ahead and start writing that letter if you want, or set the prompts aside and decide when you want to start writing that letter. Do you need help writing a letter? Contact me at bereavement@arcyhealthcare.com or call this number on the slide, and I'll be happy to listen to your prompts and help you get started. These are the resources that I used in this presentation, and you're welcome to go out and get more information about topics discussed here. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope the tips and suggestions have helped you today. My contact information is on this slide. Feel free to reach out if you need me.